welcome to another episode of the SharkPod live from Greystone Studios. Today, our guest is John Fitzgerald, equine artist and also ecom magnate, as we were just talking about just before we started this. How are you doing, John?
Very good, very good. Thanks for having me.
Great. We've got Mark Baker out there, as usual, out there in Glenageary. How are you doing, Mark Baker?
Good, Luke. Good to have you, John. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Mark. Good to be here.
So, John, we like we were talking about just before we came on here. We'd like to have a chat with people about, that have kind of different lifestyles, different type of making a living, whether that be through starting businesses or just following their passion and stuff like that. So we'd love to have a chat with you about that, about the art, about what it's like to kind of live this life. Because I think there's a lot of people out there that maybe have been thinking about being an artist for 10, 15 years, but haven't plunged yet. So we might give them a little sneak peek into what's going on there. And I know that Mark Baker, he has a huge interest in this, obviously, because of his background. So Mark, where did you come across John's work first? Do you remember?
Well, John is probably one of the best I'd say one of the best equine artists in the world. I'll say, John. So I would have known John's work over the years, but we actually met in the convention center 2 years ago. We were just talking about it off air. There was an exhibition for the Gold charity, all these globes. Do you remember them? Luke, you were there actually.
Yeah.
I don't know if you might have met each other, maybe from a distance. I don't know if you see.
Yeah, possibly.
So that's where I actually met John first, and we had a chat and we kind of clicked, and he had told me that about that you're in real estate you had your own business for a long time, and then you had kind of sold up and moved on to become a full-time artist. And I was just thinking, you're living my dream, John. So I tried to get as much information out of him as possible.
Yeah, well, I suppose it kind of happened. My background was product design. I went to college and I did product design for the guts of 4 years back in the 90s, the mid 90s. And, there wasn't a huge amount of product design. It was kind of only coming along at the time. Design was, CAD based design at the time. And we did a lot of model making and clay model making and foam making. And I finished off in university in Wales. I was in Swansea, and I was halfway through a very, very good degree that I battled hard to get into in the first place. And by hook or by crook, I came home just before Christmas, and I didn't finish it out. I wanted to get home and start earning money, and I wanted to paint. I had enough of college life. I was 3 years already in Letterkenny, where I qualified from there. And I decided I was going to make a go of it, maybe with the art or maybe with some other business venture. I wasn't too sure. But when I came home from Wales, my realization of the design world in Ireland was very small. It was very limited. There was one or two companies in Ireland who were doing product design or industrial design, as it's called. So I came home and I got a job working in a clothes shop. That was my first road into selling, if you like. Straight from college, straight into Monaghan's Menswear in the Royal Hibernian Way in Dublin.
Nice.
Fantastic job. I had a time of my life, a couple of years in Dublin City, and I had a blast. I was in my very early 20s, and life was good. And I actually went on then, Mark, and I did a bit of recruitment. For a year. A guy who used to buy suits in the shop in Monaghan offered me a job. One day I was selling him a suit, and he offered me a job in his consultancy, and I took it. And before I knew it, I was working for him. And then the property thing was starting to come along in Ireland. And this was kind of 1998. 1998. And we kind of looked at maybe setting up a kind of a property thing, or, could I do a state agency, or was this on the card? So I decided I'd go and look for a job in real estate. So I got a job in an office in Clondalkin as a junior estate agent, if you like, with no qualifications, no background, nothing. And within a couple of years, I went and I studied, and I got my diploma in property and valuations. And before I knew it, I was in the evening time painting pictures at home, in the daytime working 6-7 days a week, viewing properties all over West Dublin. And in the background, there was always paintings. I moved back home. I was living at home after college, and I had a little room which used to be our TV room when we were kids, and I changed that into a little studio. So I was kind of tipping away at a few paintings every night, selling the paintings in a local flower shop in Maynooth, which is about 5 miles away from me here in County Meath. And that's where it kind of started when I was quite young, like, in my early 20s. And I had sold a few paintings in that flower shop when I was quite young, in my teens. And I went back there and said, do you want any paintings of flowers or whatever, And that's where it started. That's where the art kind of started. And the estate agency kicked in before I knew it. Myself and my father was a valuer back in the kind of 70s and 80s. And he had a business in Dublin, a well-known business called Quinn's Off Licence in Drumcondra, which is beside Quinn's Pub. So like on All Ireland final day, it was a very busy place, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And when he saw me doing well in the estate agency, he sold his business in town, and we went on and set up our own business. I was 22 at the time, 21, and we opened two offices. And it happened so fast that literally 20 years passed of estate agency, valuation, whatever you want to call it, and art was in the background all the time.
The whole time.
All the time.
Seems like you were going through these changes very quickly as well. You're in Swansea, you come back, you're selling suits. I think it's interesting you said that you really enjoyed that. That might have been one of your favorite jobs.
Mark, it's brilliant. Yeah.
Or my wife makes fun of me because I always say that this is going to sound ridiculous because I've got a great job. I work for a big American tech company. It's great, interesting. Still, my favorite job was working in Sallynoggin in Power City. I was working in the warehouse with all my friends, and I was about 17, and it was just we used to have penalty shootouts in the back. It was talk to any customers or anything, and it was just I think there was a World Cup on or a European finals, and we just set up one of the big TVs in the back. It was just an amazing time, you had
no fear.
It
was just the key.
It was great. We just was one. I was there for about a year. It was great. Anyway, I digress. So this has all happened very quickly. Your dad's selling the place out in Quinns. I know that area quite well. My wife went to college there as a teacher, so it's that's there.
Yeah, just St. Patrick's there, opposite Clonliff Road.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So he saw that, and then 2 offices very quickly. You're 21, 22. And
I was going between an office in Clondalkin, which I was working for another guy at the time, and we were kind of, I was traveling between Clondalkin, Maynooth, Clonee. We opened our office in Clonee, which bizarrely, we officially opened the office in Clonee on September the 11th, 2001, which was probably the worst day in history for so many people.
Yeah.
And you probably couldn't have opened a business on a worse day, because I remember at the time my mother, she came back to the workplace and she looked after our office, and we had another girl, Gillian, who worked with us as well. And I remember coming into the office on the first day, literally from Clondalkin. I came over that morning, and we had just been, looking after the place and tidying it up for our first day of business in Clonee. And I remember looking at the news at 9:30 at the back room, and planes had crashed into the World Trade Centers. And here we were going off in this venture of real estate. And I mean, literally, the phones didn't ring for 6 months. And we really had to kind of think fast. Luckily enough, I think February 2002, things kicked back in again.
Okay.
And the economies around the world slowly and surely started to recover. But for that period, I had a few sleepless nights, I can tell you that. But I painted it. It was funny in Clondalkin when we had the office. I opened a little art gallery in the office, in the boardroom, which was never used.
Nice.
And clients used to come in, and I used to sell art. And I remember in that little recession in 2001, I was selling a couple of paintings away in the background. Even though the kind of day job was quiet, I was just tipping away at a couple of little sales here and there, and trying to paint horses, which at the time was a ridiculous idea to try and paint horses for whatever reason. But I always remember that little gallery I had was probably one of the first times I realized, God, I could do this maybe if I had an opportunity somewhere along the line. But I knew it had to present itself at the right place at the right time when I was completely ready. So, you know.
John, did you think that kind of gave you, the edge is the wrong word, but like Mark, you were saying this, like sometimes with customers, they kind of remember your recruitment business because you're the painter guy as well. Is there, do you know what I mean? So it just makes it a little bit different. I wonder, was there any kind of shine off having that art thing while people are waiting to meet with you, they can have a look at the gallery that's going on, or something different?
It was kind of different because with property and real estate, you're out of your office more than you're in it. You're working after hours. You're kind of, for a lot of estate agents, their job, their work starts at 5:30 in the evening. And in the summertime, you can be out viewing houses, up until 8:30, 9 o'clock, 6 days a week, if you choose.
Yeah.
And then you show houses at the weekends with different developments and that type of thing. So it really was a period of a lot of work, really intense. It was relentless because things just built up so much momentum over the years in property, as everyone knows, in Ireland. And we also know what happened because it built up too much momentum too fast. And that's another story, what happened in 06, 07 with our offices too. So, but I think, I think the art and the estate agency for me, I didn't combine them in any way. It was just that I had the office and my art was on the wall. So it was an opportunity to sell some work, but it never really crossed over too much in the sense.
I think when people, like artists, usually they get into art and passionate about art from a young age, and it's so rewarding in so many ways that it becomes an obsession. What was it? Was it an obsession for you, and did you have to pull yourself away from that obsession to actually kind of ground yourself and get a real job type of thing? And or you think if you had a kind of overly focused on the art from it too young, almost, it wouldn't have worked out in the long run?
Yeah, possibly, because I went into it, if you like, professionally at kind of, 38, 39. I had been doing it all the time from the age of maybe 12 or 13. I'd been painting, I'd been drawing, I'd been, right through school, junior cert, leaving cert, art was, I could get an A in art. That's the one subject I was guaranteed I was going to do okay in. But I think the reality was, maybe Mark, if I started straight into art college, straight out to become an artist professionally, I don't think I knew enough about myself back then. I don't think I was grounded enough back then. I was a scatty 21-year-old, having the crack with his mates, going off on holidays and doing things and whatever. But I probably wasn't ready for it because it's quite a serious job when you get into it. As you know, it takes a lot of energy. It burns up a lot of energy. It takes up a lot of your mind space. And I was carrying the can of two jobs. Really, when my art started to become popular from 06, 07, 08 onwards, I really was looking at juggling a lot of stuff in my life, and I was probably starting to pay the price with my health, maybe a little bit, and not looking after myself. And as I spoke earlier about, like, real estate back then was 7 days a week. It was constant. There was no level.
Was it an enjoyable job? It seems like it's a lot of late nights and weekends and stuff like that. Was it worth it, or did you get kind of a buzz?
Yeah, I did. I did, because it was enjoyable, it was rewarding, and we ran our own business, and it was a family-based business, so it was kind of nice. I was working with my parents, And we had other people in our offices as well who we worked with, and we had a great team. We had a fantastic team of people in Ratoath, where we had a financial company who took part of our office. Great guy, Derek McGuire, still a very good friend of mine. You know, he's one of the top financial guys in the country, a broker. And he was in the office with us for a long time. And we kind of became a bit of a family. And we became a really close unit. We got on really well. And I suppose everyone gelled well. And time went by so fast, probably because of that. Everyone was busy at the time. But, you know, things changed very quick in 07. Very quick.
Bring us back to 07 then, John, if you can stomach it.
Yeah, I remember 07, you know, things were good. I was married at this stage. I had moved out to County Meath, a little village called Kilcloon in County Meath, where I grew up. We had the offices running, 07. Things were starting to flicker a bit in 06. You could see the cracks were coming. There was, people were buying a lot of stuff. There was, stuff was kind of reaching a level where, you know, land values had reached a point where it was $1 million an acre plus for land. It was getting crazy. And then I remember February 2007, I can remember being in the office in Ratoath, and we opened that office in 2004. And this was our second office. So we were carrying two offices, two sets of staff. And I remember looking at Derek in the office one day in February. This always stands out to me. And I spoke to a group of 6th class school kids last year about this story, of how to be prepared for stuff that you're never, you know, always be prepared for stuff that you can't be sure is going to happen, or, you know, unexpected stuff happens all the time in life. And I don't think we were prepared for this, because it had gone, as I said, from, you know, 98, 99, 2000, 2001, World Trade Center, stuff happens, massive downturn for 6 months to a year, then momentum built up again, and then crash 07, February 07. And myself and Derek looked at each other in the office, and I remember just saying to each other, phones haven't rang in like a week. Like, stuff has really gone quiet here. And it just went like that. It fell off a cliff. Within 6 weeks, we had closed our office in Clonee. I had unfortunately had to make a tough decision and let go of people who had worked with us for quite a period. And we kept the office in Ratoath. And we cut back literally to myself, my mother and my father. And that was it. And I was lucky my wife at the time had a full-time job. And I had no income stream. So we decided very quickly we didn't take any commissions from the office. We didn't take our weekly salary or our monthly salary as we used to have. It suddenly stopped. And I can remember having a conversation with my father and our accountant. And it was a tough, I'll always remember that night, because it was all of a sudden, this isn't happening anymore. The reality really dawned on us that this business, it's in trouble. The property market had crashed, the bank system had crashed, and before we knew it, we were really on our hands and knees, and I had to think very, very fast. And I started painting cows. I started painting cows on slate, just tried to be quintessentially Irish and unique. I started painting big paintings of cattle, whatever, horses. I'd always drawn horses and I'd always painted horses, but not really good at the time. So I was never kind of ready to go there with the horses until I kind of had them, not perfected, but until I could paint one. So I started going back into the art, and I could see myself in 07 spending a couple of days at home. I converted my garage outside, part of it into a small studio, and in the freezing cold of the winter times, and I just started working away. And I even started going to antiques and fine art fairs up and down the country, loading up the Jeep, heading off, not knowing what I was doing, setting up art, like literally willy-nilly around the country in different hotels with antiques. I think I was the only artist actually at the time doing this art with the antiques. But I did this for a couple of years because the crash lasted, you know, in Meath, I know in Dublin, the crash maybe was a bit later and it was more sustainable because Dublin, you know, kind of sustains itself when things go a bit pear-shaped in markets, because it's a big, you have 1 million people and it's, maybe in a little sense, it's a micro market, whereas the countryside, we found ourselves, we got so quiet so fast that I had to diversify, and art was the first thing that
it's a very unique reaction to have when things are going wrong, to sit down and paint. It's something that I can relate to, John, but maybe not a lot of people can. But it sounds, I do that. I have done that in the past. When shit was in the fan, I go, right, I'm gonna paint, and it works on two levels. It'll make you money, but it's also it's good for the head as well.
It's good for your head, yeah. And I found that primarily when I went back painting, kind of 07. I kind of I knew there was another side happening with the business that was on its hands and knees, and we were struggling, you know. But I think the fact that we didn't really take anything from the business, we kept the business alive and we kept the business going. And then I found myself in this kind of weird situation where all of a sudden my phone was ringing from the art point of view. And I had gone out to a couple of shows. I remember being at an Antiques and Fine Art Fair in Dunleary at the lovely hotel overlooking the sea in Dunleary. The Royal Marine. Yeah. And I remember having a painting of a horse's eye. And I think this could have been around 08, 09, I'm not sure. But I remember I said, right, I'm going to have to try and I'd love to get, this is a big painting. Would I get €1,000 for this painting? I was thinking, Jesus, I'm never going to get €1,000, you know. And I had, I think, 850 or 900 in my mind. And a guy came up to me and he just looked at the painting and he fell in love with it. And I had no prices on it. And I just said, it's €1,000. And he said, I'll take it. And I remember coming home, and I remember at the time, my dad, I rang my dad and says, you're not going to believe it, I sold a painting for £1,000. And he went, what? You're joking? I said, I'm not joking. And he thought this was amazing, you know. He said, geez, if you can do that, you have to maybe look at this, you know. He said, you have to kind of maybe think seriously about this, because, you know, to take €1,000 from the property business at the time wasn't a runner, because it wasn't there to take. And we were trying to keep the thing alive without, you know, taking from it. So I just kind of built up a bit of momentum with this, and I really submerged myself with art again. I went back to NCAD. I enrolled in NCAD to do 2 nights a week for, I think it was 2 years I did it. Fine art. I went back just to hone in on my skills of painting. Literally, I wanted to go back to college again, and I was whatever age, I was 33, I think, or 34. And I wanted to go back and be with artists again and be in that environment where I knew it would nurture me. There was a recession, but this was something positive, and this was something creative, and this was something I could do. No matter how bad the property market was, I knew I could still paint. Nobody could take that away from me. And this was a chance for me to maybe improve. I could draw, I could do different things like that, but I wanted to learn, you know, how do you paint a sky, like a proper sky? How do you paint, you know, grass, trees? How do you paint a moving object? Things like that. So I decided very quickly to go back to NCAD. And I got into NCAD for a couple of nights a week for 2 years. Probably the best move I made, because I learned an awful lot of stuff and met a couple of fantastic lecturers where I learned a lot of techniques from them, you know, directly, and watching other artists working, and even just young students who came in, just who wanted to study art just for the sake of it. You learn so much off them as well, because they came with no inhibitions and no, if you like, nobody had any agenda. It was just art. And I think that's why I loved it, because in the background was the chaos of the Celtic Tiger had gone running away on us, and we were all trying to figure it out. And I was no different to anybody at the time who was either let go from their job, or was in the banking system, or was working with a construction firm. Like, I don't know, the generation that's out there now, people who are in their 30s or even younger, that how it was quite bad for a long period of years, from '06 to 2011, 2012. We had a tough time.
We've got a lot of international listeners as well, and just put that in context. Like I was in college, or like I was in this year where I didn't really go to college. I worked full time, but it kind of '07. Yeah, I was in college, and I was thinking, surely to God, this will be. Thank God I'm in college. It's kind of like shielding me, you know.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
In 3 years' time, we'll be back, you know. And then college ended. None of my friends had jobs leaving college, and it was still that was probably 2011 or something. So in Ireland, we had a prolonged contraction because of complications with banking and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
In England, or we've got a lot of listeners in America, they kind of had a quicker bounce, let's say. So, you know, it's a very interesting thing. So when we're talking about this is not just like a regular recession. It was, you know, 16% unemployment.
It was huge. Like they hadn't seen numbers of unemployment since the 80s, 70s, and 80s. Where a lot of people had to go to England, America, they emigrated to get work, and we saw that happening again with your generation, where you came out of college and you had nowhere to go. There was no financial, institutions taking people on as such. There was no businesses. There was no developers weren't really up and running at the time, and there was a lot of debt. The country had a lot of debt, so we were kind of trying to figure it out. And
I feel kind of sorry for the guys that are coming out now with the pandemic stuff, because we all went. So me and almost everyone I know went to Canada for a couple of years at the time. And it was great. You know, it was kind of sad to go, but it was a bit of an adventure. Got some good experience over there. Came back. And kind of, it makes it easier once you get a bit of a start. It's, when you leave college, you don't know really what you want to do. You're kind of someone has to do you a favor to really to get you going, you know.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think this year might be a little bit similar for the guys leaving college, you know.
I think it's look. I have a lot of empathy for people now, across the board with work, with the situation we're in now. A lot of people out of work, a lot of people can't work, a lot of people can't get to work, a lot of people are working from home. Some people are adapting to working from home because it's become the new. And human beings are fantastic because we do adapt. And it's amazing, you think when something like this happens, a pandemic, it sometimes can take a pandemic to show you serious resolve that you mightn't have thought you had. Because to adapt is something we all have to learn to do with this, and we possibly will have to live with it for another 6 months or so. We don't know. Like, this thing could disappear as quickly as it appeared. Why it's here, we don't know. There's no point questioning why it's here. It's just we now have to adapt and do the right things.
And you've been through a couple of downturns, maybe 2 or 3 at this stage, John.
2, definitely, yeah.
Nobody likes to give advice to people or be condescending, but like if you had to give advice to people who are kind of struggling and have been affected more than someone else, maybe anything that you could give people?
Yeah, I think at the moment, the way things are, you see, people are put into a position where, number one, we have to remain at home, which isn't normal for human beings. It's not normal for us to stay in one place. We're social beings. We like to interact with people. We like to shake people's hands. We like to hug people. So I think the most important thing I've learned, if I can give any of this advice to anybody listening to this, is if you can learn to sit with yourself in a room, in a studio, in an office system, or in a home office system, and just know that it's okay. Not to question it too much, not to try and figure it out too much, just to go with the flow of what it is, I think is really important, because I know that's okay for me to say. I'm working at home pretty much all the time as a solitude person. Like, it's like, Mark, when you're in the studio, you're on your own, and that's the way you have to be. But for people who've all of a sudden been in an office with maybe 500-600 people working around them, imagine the noise in the morning in an office system in Dublin City or wherever you're working, and you've got an office of 300, 400, 500 people, and the energy in that office and the vibrancy at lunchtime and the chaos of Dublin City at lunchtime, trying to get a coffee, trying to get a bagel, trying to do whatever. And all of a sudden that's taken away from you. And you're sitting at home in an office and you're looking out the window and you're going, what is going on here? My advice to people is at the minute, if this is any help, and it's helped me, is try and keep active every day for maybe 15 or 20 minutes every day. First thing in the morning, if you get up, maybe set your alarm clock half an hour earlier and spend that time doing a bit of exercise. Maybe drink a bit more water than you normally do. And maybe do a little bit of mindfulness or meditation, which for a lot of people, they don't understand it. They don't know what it is. A lot of people are doing it now. It's a buzzword. But I've discovered it. It's something I do. It's something I make time for myself every morning. I have a ritual I do, and I've done it for 5-6 years, and it's helped me now. So it's something that's kind of, I would have put into place maybe going back 4, 5, 6 years ago. And it's that spending time with yourself where there's nothing happening and there's no noise, that it's okay to sit there and just daydream for maybe half an hour. I know we all have to work and we're all doing our day jobs from at home, but I still think if people are struggling with that, I think the best thing to do is spend time on yourself, work on yourself, exercise the body. The body is I remember listening to the guys, I think it was a podcast or somebody I was listening to, and the question was asked, what's one of our most primitive needs? And I first thought maybe water and food. And they said our primitive need is movement. Movement is the first thing we need before we can get water or before we can get food. You go back to millions and millions of years ago, if you go back to cavemen and whatnot, and they were living and they had to go and run and forage for food before they could survive. So we're kind of going back to this strange reality of we're being with ourselves more than we've ever been. And that's why I think people might struggle with the mental side of things, because there's so much solitude and we've been taken away from people, and we need people. And people are great for propping us up and for patting you on the back, but now you have to kind of pat yourself on the back, and it's okay to be okay. And it's okay to have a bad day as well. That's really important. People forget that. If you're having a bad day, I think it's okay to have a bad day. It's okay to ring your mate and say, do you know what, Mick, I'm having a bad day today. Because it's really important. You reach out to people, you phone a friend every day and just talk. Talk rubbish for 3 minutes if you have to, but it's just that whole connectivity thing where we're not connected with each other. It's just to reach out and just, I always say to anybody, if they're having a bad day, acknowledge, yeah, today isn't a good day. Could be for whatever reason. Could be through, you've gone through a bad period, you've gone through a tough period of work, you've gone through a tough period of whatever it could be. But just to acknowledge it is the first thing,
And I really like the idea of reaching out to people and calling them rather than just WhatsApp messaging. Sometimes WhatsApp messaging
Absolutely.
kind of like just kind of touching base, but like I've started just to cold call my friends, in the evening to see how I was, checking in on people. And it's funny, we were laughing, one of my friends the other day, because it was the first weekend of the kind of re-lockdown in Dublin. So I guess a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking. I was just saying, we usually start off with any news, anything strange, and obviously there's no news or anything, gossip or anything, because nothing's happening. Right? So we kind of got that. We acknowledged that early, got that out of the way, and just whatever talked rubbish for half an hour on, current events or conspiracy theory, anything, just whatever was on.
It's that connectivity again, isn't it?
Yeah. So
I think a lot of people struggle with the fact that there's a lot of uncontrollables out there, and there's nothing you can do about that. So I like the message or the saying, control your controllables, and that's kind of goes back to what you're saying. You can control all these simple things. Yeah. So this is going to be just to go back to NCAD. This is going to be really hard, this question, but
of course.
What are the kind of main things you learned there that made you like a better painter?
I think I learned I think when you become an artist, you might have this illusion or this mindset of what you're doing. You have to be critical as an artist, self-critical. You have to be aware of, you know, I suppose where you want to be as an artist. I had not a goal, not so much a goal, but I had this, I would just love to be able to be really good at this in whatever form I can do it in, whether it be whatever medium. I just knew I loved horses anyway, so it was always a struggle to paint the horse properly. It's always going to be a struggle to paint anything, because the day you think you have it nailed, Mark, as you know, is, I don't know, I don't think we'll ever have it nailed, because it's so important to try new things, to learn from different artists, to not to copy, but to learn, to look at their methods, to look at what paint they use, to look at what mediums they use, to look at what brushes, you know, where do you buy your brushes? Where do you buy that easel? And for me, I knew I could draw, but I couldn't, I wasn't a good colorist, if that's, and that's one thing I learned in college. When I did product design, I was taught how to render drawings and how to draw freehand. That was a fantastic thing that I learned when I was in college. And I learned how to model in clay, which is standing to me now with the new venture I'm doing. But I think the one thing I learned, Mark, you're not, if you think you're good at it, there's always somebody better. There's always going to be somebody better. And that's just life. But you have to push yourself to be as good as them, or you have to push yourself to be as good as you can be. If you're happy to be at a level, that's fine too. For different people, we all have different expectations. But when I realized I could draw well and I could start to paint well, and I did a horse for a friend of our family's going back years ago, and I remember a friend of mine turned around to me and says, "Gee, that's really good, John." He says, you might be able to do the horse really well, you know. And that's when I kind of went back to college and says, you know what, I'm going to give this a good lash, and I'm going to try and learn as much as I can about artists, about equine artists, about everything I could teach myself, Mark. I tried to do it over the last 10 years. When the downturn came, it was my chance to just go, right, armbands off, jump in. And that's literally what I did. I slowly started getting commissions. I slowly, very slowly, and I'll be, you know, it took me a long time to try and get to where I am now. I'm still on that journey. I'm by no means the complete article. I don't think any artist is, because it's a journey. It's you know, until the day you stop, you put down that brush and you can't paint anymore. God forbid, it's many, many years away. Yeah. But, you know, I was reading a great bit about Sorolla, the fantastic artist from Spain, you know, the master of light he was known as. And for any artist listening to this, Sorolla was just fantastic. And there's a sad bit in one of his books where, you know, he had a stroke. And there's a photograph of him in his garden, I think it's around 1920s, 1930s. And he's just sitting there immobilized, not able to work. And I could really feel for the guy, because his whole life was art. He had studied so much, he had learned so much, he had worked with so many artists all his life. And then boom, all of a sudden, it was taken away from him. And that's why I think every day we get up, it's a privilege to do what I do. Like, I mean, it's an absolute privilege. I'm blessed to come into my studio every day. And I'm still learning, Mark. I'm still learning every day.
Yeah. It's like a musician sitting down and going, right, I have to this song, like, this is the best song in the world, I'm done. That doesn't happen. And it's the same with an artist. And you also never hear an artist say, you know, I'm going to retire when I'm 65. Yeah. I can't wait for it. It's like you'd have to physically force me to retire, you know.
Absolutely. I think, like, one of our oldest artists, and I love her work, was Gladys McCabe from up the north. She was painting until she was in her late 90s. She died last year, I think, at the age of 100. I'll be corrected on that, but lovely artist. She used to paint horses and fairs, you know, lovely little scenes. And she was painting right up until the end. And she lived to be 100.
Wow.
You know?
Wow.
And she was Irish. She was great.
To go back to the equine art, like people, sometimes people say to me like, oh, like, would you be able to do a great painting of whatever horse it is? Now, I'm not into the horse scene, so I wouldn't know, the who's who.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just like, because what I do is portraits and people and the skin tones and, facial expressions and stuff. I just say it's almost like learning a new language. I can't just dip in to do that. But just out of interest, what are the key aspects if people are looking to paint horses or other animals? What are the kind of key aspects that they have to focus on?
First of all, like, you have to. I didn't directly come from an equine background. My father was hugely into horse racing. I wanted to be a jockey when I was young. That was one of my goals. I was always going horse racing with my dad from a very, very young age. And I would have been sitting in weigh rooms and looking at jockeys and the silks and the shiny leather boots and the smell of the jockeys' valets when they're, waxing up their boots. And I can remember that. I can still, that's a clear, vivid memory for me as a kid. So at that point, Mark, to paint the horse, to answer your question, all of that information is in my head. Standing at fences when I was a young fella, 15, 16 years of age, over at Ferryhouse Racecourse, watching horses jumping fences at 40 miles an hour, listening to that noise of the birch, and horses kind of jump over the top of it. All of that has been ingrained in my head for like 20 years. And then I started going around to yards around my area here, different yards. And I'd be sketching, looking at horses, sketching horses, watching them moving, bringing the sketch pad with me to horse races, and standing on the sideline with my, not the sideline, but on the side of the track, with my camera in one hand, my sketch pad here, trying to get a quick picture of a horse jumping a fence, and then trying to sketch something really fast of that moment. And like, people will know me from horse racing now because they would have seen me at the Curragh Racecourse, or they would have seen me at Leopardstown or Ferryhouse painting or sketching with, and it's taken me so many years to try and I still go around with my sketch pad. I still go to race meetings, or I did up until March of this year, with my sketch pad and with my camera, trying to see, can I sketch something different? Can I get a new angle on this here? Can I come up with some new idea of a horse jumping a fence, or can I try and mix up different colors, or try a new medium here doing this? Or so if somebody wants to paint a horse, first of all, you got to go and meet the horse, feel the horse, see the horse, literally understand how a horse walks, how a horse looks, the noises. The horse racing scene is a whole different scene where you have so much color and atmosphere at the races and so many characters. Like, it's vibrant, it's fantastic. And that's all part of my paintings and part of the studies and sketches I do. And I think, Mark, to be honest with you, sketching, drawing, freehand, looking at a subject and trying to take it down, and you have one eye on your sketchbook and you have one eye on your subject, and it looks wrong, and you're criticizing yourself and you're going, what is this I'm doing? And all of a sudden it starts to come to shape when you get back to your studio and you go, God, yeah, that could be something, So yeah. It's trying to perfect that, trying to perfect the impossible, really, because it doesn't, perfection I don't think exists in art, really. It's sometimes there's more beauty in the imperfection, or the bits people don't see. Do you know what I mean? It's trying to just practice. It's relentless. Like, people, if they knew the hours I put into the studio, early mornings, going back 15 years, like, I mean, sketchbook after sketchbook after book after book, it's constant.
John, I have a quote here in front of me on a whiteboard from Michelangelo. It says, "If people knew how hard I worked to achieve mastery, it wouldn't seem so wonderful at all." Makes sense.
Very good. Absolutely. Yeah, very good. It's very
And
good.
just, you mentioned something at the start, is you were kind of, you've been around it from a young age. So essentially
Yeah.
the question shouldn't be, how do I draw horses? How do I paint horses? It should be, what makes you tick? What gets you going? And that'll be the thing when you find that. And that's a big question for artists who are actually technically good, or you know, somewhat good technically. They'll be like, well, what is my thing? And I think that's important to actually nail down. I knew mine was people, it was faces, it was all that kind of stuff. And then it just makes like painting till 1, 2 in the morning. That makes it a lot easier than me trying to paint a horse that I know nothing about.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing that people should think about. What is the thing that's going to keep you up till 1, 2 in the morning painting? And time is going to fly by. It's going to be a flow state. You're not even going to want to eat, drink, anything like that.
Yeah, like, you know, hours go by, and before you know it, it's 7 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock. You've been called, you know, relentlessly to come in and sit down and have dinner with your family, and it's cold. I don't know how many evenings a week you're sitting down and but I learned to stop as well. That's one thing I've learned, which I would have been guilty of for many years, which is coming in, working, coming in with the family, spending an hour and coming back to the studio. And before you know it, as you say, it's lights out, it's 12 o'clock and you're falling asleep at the easel. So I've learned to stop that. And I'm much more productive now with the routine I have now. And that was a choice I had to make, because I think rest is key. Recovery is key, no matter what, if you're a sports person, if you're an artist or a business person or whatever, rest is very important as well, you know. We can burn the candle too much sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you're obsessed with something, which they kind of goes hand in hand. One thing I noticed as well, and it's kind of often an elephant in the room. Like you mentioned, you went back, or you went to NCAD, you learned all the technical stuff. You surround yourself by artists, but you had something that a lot of artists, really two things. You had real business world experience, but a lot of artists don't have the ability or want to sell. How important has being able to sell your work? How important has that been for you?
Oh, look, you can kind of, art is, this is the kind of art is a really positive thing, right? I don't see any negatives in art at all, no matter what you're doing. But when it becomes something that it's tangible, it's real, and you get paid for it, and all of a sudden you're getting commissions, and you're getting some big commissions, and it becomes, well, here, I was at this stage, Mark, when I had a day job and I had the art, and my art was starting to take over. And I used
to two horses in a race, John.
Absolutely, it was like two horses in a race, and the art was starting to take over, and it was becoming commercially successful, and the property market was starting to come back a bit. And all of a sudden I was kind of going, God, here we go again. I was kind of, what do I want to do? So I had to kind of think very quick with the art. Do I want this, or do I want a bit of both? And I knew in my heart and soul, I wanted to be an artist all day, every day. I liked my day job, but I was passionate about painting. I was passionate about horses and animals and cattle and all nature and stuff like that. I was passionate about it, and it became a huge, overwhelming thing for me to do. But unfortunately, it took the sudden illness of my dad in 2012, where he passed away in 2013 at 65. He got leukemia, unfortunately, and he lost the battle with cancer. And that was my realization. It took an awful tragedy in our family for me to kind of wake up and go, I want to do this for the rest of my life. And the day before my father died, actually, was a Friday, and I have the quote up on my wall here. And he rang me at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And this was on November the 8th, 2013. And for whatever reason, I wrote down what he said to me. He rang me at about 3:30, 4 o'clock, and it was, John, all the horses are going down the lane. Are you going to paint it? Bring your camera. It would make a great painting, right? That's the last conversation we had with each other.
Mm.
And he died the following day at 2:30. He had after that conversation we had at 4:30, he had a brain hemorrhage that evening at 6:30, 7 o'clock, and he died the following day. He slipped into a peaceful coma, if you like, and he just passed away. And they were the last words, and it was nearly like him saying to me, he was setting me on my way. It was like, I've always looked at that quote. People always read that quote when they come into my studio, and I think that was unfortunately, it was my dad's passing that gave me this burning fire to do what I want to do for the rest of my life, which is paint. And thank God I've never looked back. I went for it, and I sold my business. I sold the property business 4 years ago. It took a long time for all this to happen, because we were in the middle of the downturn and it was starting to upturn, and I was going through the loss of my dad and dealing with all that, and we young kids in the family, so there was a lot going on emotionally with me. So I was really blessed that a great guy came along, and I was in the right place at the right time, and he took over my business, and it enabled me to go and fulfill my dream. And really, that's what happened. I was very lucky. I was unfortunate in so many ways, but lucky in so many too.
It's interesting to me as well, because we've talked to a few people on the podcast, and one of the questions I wanted to ask was, okay, if you're going from being kind of a business person to an artist, did you set a goal for yourself to say, okay, if I get X amount of commission money in the last 6 months, then that will be the tipping point or something like that? But we spoke to a good few people, and I remember we spoke to one of Ireland's best photographers we had on, and I kind of pitched a question like that to him as well, but it was a kind of a burn the boat situation as well. There was no, we just went all in on it instead of looking for another job, and that's kind of when he's been doing it ever since. Had a lot of success. But it is an interesting one, because I'm always wanted to know what's the kind of trigger point to make a lifestyle change, and everyone we've spoken to, it's never really been a financial one where there was a spreadsheet where you're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So very interesting to hear that story. So
there's a book one of the books that we're reading at the moment, Luke, is it How to Achieve Unreasonable Success?
Yeah, Richard Koch.
Yeah, in that he says people who go on and do big things, important things, have an impact. There's always one life-changing event that has to kind of happen to you in order for that to happen. And people almost get lucky, in a way, if that happens to them, depending on what the event is. But it's like, right, we know this is actually a factor. So he says if you want to achieve a lot of success in whatever it is, you almost have to orchestrate an event in your life where it is moving to a certain company, getting to know a certain person, some sort of big event that will actually make you take that step to the next level. It's interesting. And what made you, sorry, just to move on to the new work that you're doing, John, and the sculpting, what made you move towards that, and how are you getting on with it?
Getting on great with it. It's happening really quick, but I suppose the wheels were in motion years ago at college when I was doing the product design, and I was making a lot of clay models and models out of foam, and we were building the framework of a product. If you were designing your product, you had to know how the product went together, was made, how the plastic molds were going to fit, how everything was going to work. So, and then your final model was made out of either clay or foam. So I was doing a lot of clay modeling, a lot of foam modeling, and making products. And then I did bits and pieces of little sculpting things here and there. And then back in February or March, after I came back from Cheltenham this year, and the lockdown kicked in around, I think, the 10th or 15th of March, we had a really lovely sunny period, if you remember, from kind of March right through to June, where every day seemed to be just gorgeous sunshine. And we had a really early summer back in April and May. And I was out in the fields behind my studio, and I brought out a bit of clay that I bought in Evans in Dublin. And I started sculpting a little cow that was sitting down around me. I was doing a bit of painting outside with the easel, and I had the clay with me as well, and I just started sculpting. And it kind of happened effortlessly, if you know what I mean. It just happened. And then I went on and I did a Charolais bull, and I did a couple of horses, and I've done a few other bits and pieces since, and I'm launching my first bronze this week.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is bizarre. It's happened as fast as that. But I've been working really hard at it in the background since kind of March, April, since I started discovering the clay again. And it's just something that's come back to me. I never sculpted anything really in a big way, but just in the last 6 months, this is something I've really, I've been looking at. It's obviously something I've been interested in because I've always read about sculpture. I've books about sculpture, I've books about anatomy, you know, and it's just kind of started from there. Like the sculpture is something that, as an artist, it's great to be able to do, but it's just another. I just see it as another form of what I'm doing, Mark. If you can understand me, it's just a three-dimensional form of being on canvas. And I think the fact that I was able to draw the horse and paint cattle, I'm finding it okay to be able to form them in a kind of three-dimensional way, if you like.
I'd imagine it's all the same principles involved.
It's measurements, it's building up, it's light and dark, it's shade, it's looking to see what works, what doesn't work, it's abstraction, taking away material. You know, it's like adding paint, taking away paint. So it's so far so good. It's great. I'm loving it.
And is it a completely different business than the art business? Is it that you have to find like a new type of gallery that you position these in, or is it something that is only starting now? How does that work? Is it the same business?
Yeah, it's kind of similar. Like a lot of the galleries, I deal with just a couple of galleries, and they're quite happy for me to supply them with some bronzes as well. Okay. But it's like I'm reselling. It's like I'm starting again as a brand new artist, but this time in the doing sculpture. I'm still really busy, thankfully, doing all my equine stuff and paintings, and that'll never change. That's always, you know, because I'm finding now, which is bizarre. I got asked to do a painting of a bull recently, and I found a sculpture. The sculpture that I did recently of this Charolais bull is really helping with my painting. It's actually making a better painting because I now have a model of my Charolais bull, which is three-dimensional, and I'm working from that, which is bizarre. But one is kind of helping the other. And the business side of it, I find it the same. I'm marketing myself now. It'll be just John Fitzgerald, possibly artist and sculptor, or John Fitzgerald artist. I think it's all the one. It's all, you know, if an artist decides that he wants to sculpt and he's doing portraits like Mark, it's okay. He's still an artist. He's just dealing with another medium. He's just dealing with clay as opposed to paint.
Absolutely. It's such an interesting thing, especially for people who aren't artists, to sit in conversations has been super interesting. It seems like there's, like I said, it doesn't matter what you're doing if you're kind of expressing yourself with some sort of material. That's the main thing. But we usually at this stage, we're actually coming up on an hour, believe it or not. This one has absolutely flown by. I don't know.
Before we do a kind of quick fire stuff, just where can people see your work, John? Where are the best places? We'll add some links in and stuff, but galleries, social media, website, and stuff like that.
Yeah, at the moment, johnfitzgeraldart.ie is my website. I've my Instagram page, my Facebook page, John Fitzgerald Art. I'm exhibiting with the Wilton Gallery in Sandycove in Dublin. That's the only gallery I'm in Dublin. And I deal with Riley's over in Prosperous. They sell antiques, fine art, and I have the Kildare Gallery, which are based at Carton. Ken and Ruth there. So like I've been dealing with them since they opened, and you know, a lot of my work at the minute is selling just directly online. It sells. People ring up, they come out to the studio where I view work at a social distance, obviously. But I'm lucky that I can do that. I set up where, you know, there's 3 or 4 meters in the studio here at any one time where people can come and look at the work. So like, I'm lucky, Mark, in the sense that people come directly to me, and the galleries that represent me, they use them as well, you know.
And do you do much international? Do you have much international orders? Or did you do much in the UK? I'd imagine the horse scene is big.
Yeah,
big
yeah. I suppose in the last couple of years, I've been accepted into Cheltenham as one of the artists who exhibits in Cheltenham. You know, I've been applying to get into Cheltenham for years and years and years. And 2 years ago, I was accepted to get into Cheltenham and exhibit in the shopping village, which is, it's a huge place because you have 70,000 people a day at the Cheltenham Festival. And I always saw that as a place where I could really launch a lot of my work. And it's a huge show for me every year. This year, I was really lucky. I had a very good show. And I do a lot of work specifically for that show. So I target certain shows in Cheltenham, and Punchestown are 2 huge shows that I do every year. This year is totally different. I was lucky that I got to Cheltenham, but I didn't get to do Punchestown, which was a disappointment because that's a fantastic show every year, and it's a really happy, vibrant place to be, you know. So you just have to adapt again. It's you got to find a new way to sell your work. International clients I'm very lucky. I have a lot of clients in the UK. I have clients in America, Germany, Australia, who are into racehorses, and I do their work. So I'm lucky from that point of view. I get commissioned a lot from the UK and Ireland. People in Ireland are fantastic. People in the racehorse industry in Ireland are absolutely fantastic. They've been a massive support to me. And, you know, if there's anyone listening there, I want to thank them now, because they've supported me right now since, you know, February, March, April, May, when things were tough for a lot of artists. The guys in horse racing in Ireland supported me and continue to support me. So I'm blessed, you know, and I'm very grateful for everyone who's bought paintings off me lately, you know.
Very good. They're a passionate bunch, I'd say.
Absolutely. Very, very much so, yeah.
So look, you were saying there you want to move into the quick fire round?
Yeah, we usually do like a lightning round, although it's been such a nice easygoing conversation there. It doesn't seem right to throw in the lightning round here. Tell you what, Mark, you know,
good time to drink now. Drink some water. Huh?
Yeah, to get some water there, John. Mark, why don't you pick some questions off your list there that, you know, maybe I can maybe some thinkers rather than
Yeah. Look, obviously, me and John could talk about art all day, but
we'll do another podcast after this, Mark.
Yeah.
Art's the font. We'll do it every week.
Now here's an interesting one, because I think we chatted about this before. What time do you get up at in the morning, and what time do you go to sleep?
I get up. I spent 4 years getting up at kind of 5:45 until 6:15, solid, 5 days a week. I now get up between 6 and half 6. I've kind of taken it easy on myself a little bit. Okay. No, I tend to get up around 6:15, half 6 now. And
what does your morning routine look like? Just out of interest.
Morning routine, typical morning, is get up around that 6 o'clock time if I can, 6:15. I do a bit of qigong or yoga, stretching, 15-20 minutes. Every second day I'll go for a half an hour, 40-minute run. I'll do 15-20 minutes of just sitting with myself in the studio, bit of quiet music before I start. And I'll have a list of 5 things that I have to get done. I normally do that on a Sunday. I write down everything that has to be done for 5 days. And that's done 10 minutes on a Sunday, prioritize everything there. And then I set Monday morning. I finish work if I can at 6 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock in the evening, but really 6 o'clock. And I take 2 breaks throughout the day. But I kind of start early. I don't have breakfast until 9:30, until the kids have gone to school. I have a couple of pints of warm water every morning, and that's my routine. And I kind of train, or at least every second or every third day, I will do a bit of a run or whatever, just different movement,
Mm-hmm.
And then very important that I try and finish at 6:30, if I can, and just be fresh for the next day, And I go to sleep. I'm not really disciplined with my sleep. I can go sleep. Some evenings I can be in bed for 10:30. Other evenings I can get caught up. I could be up until maybe 11 o'clock, 11:30. But I'm happy enough with kind of 6 hours. I can get by easy enough with 6 hours sleep. Once I get 6 hours, I'm kind of okay.
Yeah, same here. Okay. How much money is enough money?
Just enough money. Whatever you need to get by, whatever you need, just so you're content and you have enough. What is enough? Enough. If you can have enough money that you can pay your bills, that you can get up every morning and have a smile on your face and be grateful for what you have, I think there's more currency in kind of gratitude and happiness than there actually is in money. Money comes, I think, with having that stuff. If you're grateful for what you have, your family, your friends, the world around you, the people around you, surround yourself with good people. I think the money will come. If you're doing what you love in life and you're giving out work and you're doing fantastic work for people and people are really happy, that's a currency in itself, I think. I think that's an exchange. The money comes along with it, but I think it'll always keep coming when you keep giving. I think that's the way I've discovered this universe is kind of working for me at the moment.
Yeah, I think the great man Matthew McConaughey once said, "Gratitude reciprocates." I think he said.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's if you just try and be the best you can be every day, I think you'll get rewarded in different ways. Money is one reward for me. I've been so blessed in the last 4 or 5 years with the career I've had. Stuff I've done, meeting people I've never expected to meet. Painting horses I've never expected I'd ever be in a position to paint. But now I believe I can do it. Now I believe I will get the work. Now I have a lot of belief in myself. And I think a lot of good stuff. I've changed a lot of things in my life. And, if you like, that currency I've given out has given me currency back.
Yeah, very good.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Is it who you know or is it what you know?
Good question.
We've had all types of answers for this one, so
is it who you know or what you know? It's both. I think it's both.
In equal measure?
Yeah, you have to work the room yourself. You've got to work the room. You've got to be the one who's willing to get up and do the hard yards, and you put yourself in positions with people you don't know. So you have to get uncomfortable. I think one thing, if I can give any advice to anyone, is get out of your comfort zone and get into positions where you do feel uncomfortable. You might feel embarrassed. You might feel odd. And then the what you knows kind of come along by getting yourself into a position where you meet people. Then it's the who you knows, because you've got yourself into a position to meet somebody, maybe who's famous, maybe who's a famous artist, or maybe who's a famous gallery curator, or somebody that you need to know. But you have to get uncomfortable for yourself to kind of become the what you knows, if you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's a very good question.
I think you've
a very good question.
And I think you've answered my last question, which is, if you could advise somebody to learn one skill, what would it be?
Oh.
Aside from work in the room, so I think that's a good skill in itself that you mentioned.
To be present.
Interesting.
To be present. To listen to people when, somebody's talking to you, listen to them. If somebody's with you in a room, give them attention, listen to them, be present. I think we've lost this connectivity with each other and maybe the world in the last 6 months has taught us a little bit about what us three are doing here. We're sitting here where we can. It's just be present, and it's okay to be with yourself, and it's okay, to have the good days, the bad days. I used to be, and I still am to a certain extent, overthinker. I overthink a lot of things, but I've learned a lot to just be present, to be in the moment, to look at something in the sky and see it as something different, or it's okay to look out the window for 10 minutes and daydream. And, what if? But I think it's very important for people at the minute to be present, because I think we lost the ability a little bit, all of us, to be present. It's definitely one thing I've learned in the last 6 months is because we've no control of this. The only thing we can control is right now. I said to a guy recently, he was thinking of going away, and he wanted to see better things on the other side of the world and different things. And I said to him, everything you have is right under your nose. And he didn't leave. Sometimes everything we have is literally under here. And it's, the breath coming out of your nose, the presence of the day, feeling the air in your face, whatever it is for anybody. I think if we can learn to be present and sit with yourself a little bit, I think you'll get through the day a little bit better. I hope.
Couldn't agree more. And it reminds me of a quote that my mom always says. Mark, you've probably heard this before as well. Because I used to travel a lot when I was in my 20s. I'd always be maybe like your friend, go and look, see if there's something better on the other side of the world.
Yeah.
My mom used to always say, wherever you go, there you are.
Absolutely.
You can't away from yourself. So,
that's brilliant. Yeah, she was so right.
Yeah, so I don't know if you got that or it was an original quote, but she said it a few times. So shout out to Geraldine.
It usually comes from Forrest Gump or somewhere like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he's some of the best quotes ever. When you look at that film, there's some of the best quotes ever come out of it.
Yeah. So John, thank you. I'd like to thank you so much for coming along and having a chat with us today.
It's been a pleasure. It's been fantastic. Yeah.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, Mark.
We'll put all of the website, the socials, all that type of stuff on the show notes as well. So if anyone's listening to this and they want to learn a little bit more about John and John's work, you can find that in the links below. But thanks very much, John. We'll talk soon.
Thanks guys. Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
And we are...